Hello, 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 everyone, and good evening to you. Welcome to Walking Miracles. And tonight, this is our premiere episode, and we have with us Miss Stacey Miller. And it is an honor to have her here with us. So if you are on here, please do us a favor, like and share this video, and make sure that you comment, ask questions, or whatever you need to do during this interview, because this is all about obtaining knowledge and learning more about PPCM, peripartum cardiomyopathy. So hi, Stacey. Welcome.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Can you tell us where you are joining us from, as well as let us know a little bit about yourself?
So I am actually British, but I live in North Carolina. I've lived in America for about 5 years, so I have a little bit of knowledge of the healthcare system in both countries, and I've also got friends in both countries who have peripartum cardiomyopathy. So I have access to quite a few different people and experiences.
Oh, wow. So before your experience with peripartum cardiomyopathy, had you ever heard of this disorder before?
No, I hadn't, and I've actually got midwives in my family, and they hadn't heard of it either. And we'll obviously talk a bit more about me specifically.
Yeah.
I actually already had an underlying condition, so I've already had, conversations and access to cardiologists since I was 19. And prior to getting pregnant, I was under the care of my cardiologist, fortunately already. So I did have an understanding. And when I became pregnant, everybody that I had to be involved with, like the OB office, they were all aware. I have SVT, which is supraventricular tachycardia.
Mm-hmm.
Conversations about the heart and how my body and my heart was going to manage with the pregnancy and the birth. So even more so, it was a shock to me to find out about this disease after the fact, when I'd heard nothing about it. I'd never heard of it before, and no one I've spoke to, like family, friends, have heard of it either.
Right. That's amazing to me, but it's not difficult for me to understand that because I'm a registered nurse by trade, and I went through nursing school. And going through nursing school, we learned a lot about preeclampsia. We learned a lot about other pregnancy issues and diagnosis that would come up during pregnancy, but we did not really learn anything about peripartum cardiomyopathy. And again, it wasn't until my diagnosis that I actually began to investigate and gain knowledge on it, so that I could also assist in spreading awareness with it. So tell us a little bit about what happened, what led up to the events of you finding out about your peripartum cardiomyopathy. Did you have issues during your pregnancy, during the beginning of it? When did your issues start?
So it's a bit of a longer story, but I think it's important because, as you said, when we spoke in the past, there's things that I might experience that it's going to trigger a thought in somebody else's mind.
Yes.
Because the more people I spoke to, and I'm sure you're the same, the experiences are so varied and different, but they also have very similar recurring themes and things going on that's important as well. So for me personally, like I said, I was diagnosed at 19 with SVT. So to just explain that briefly, it's an electrical issue in the heart that can be triggered, and your heart rate will spike. And obviously, with it being so high, for me, it's been in the like 200 beats a minute. You do have to go to the ER
Right.
and get that addressed if it doesn't come down naturally on its own. So I was already on beta blockers. So it had been on and off since I was 19. I got pregnant at 34. So this is like an ongoing issue. So I already had my cardiologist in place, and I was switched to metoprolol because that's pregnancy safe. But I was just taking it as needed. He didn't have any concerns, and luckily he did do an echo, just to be safe. I'd never had one before, and my ejection fraction was great. It was 60. there was no concerns about the pregnancy. There was no discussion about peripartum cardiomyopathy. The only conversations were really around the birth and what would be the best option for me. So as far as I was aware, that was the only issue that I was going to face. Like, the birth might be a little bit more tricky if I have an SVT attack, or I'm tachycardic. So that's the only thing that was on my mind. And I had my daughter in July 2020, so around February 2020, that'll be about 16 to 18ish weeks. I was very tachycardic. I had a really bad flu, and it was at the very start of COVID. I was in the UK visiting, so it just started, like, in the UK and Europe. So we did have a suspicion about it, but it was so new that it wasn't really on anyone's radar. So I was tachycardic about 125 beats a minute pretty consistently with any kind of movement. The problem that I faced every time that this was addressed is, you already have SVT, it's probably that. So SVT became the scapegoat for anything heart related that I faced in pregnancy, which at the time I thought, great, they're on the ball with this. But now looking back, I'm like, there's so much that they probably missed because they just missed it as this. So I did go to the ER in February 2020 with the tachycardia. It shot up to 180 beats per minute. I was very unwell with this flu. I don't know if it was COVID or just a bad flu. And yeah, that was pretty much that thing with being tachycardic on and off and having to increase the metoprolol. I was really trying hard not to take it because it can have some effect on the baby. But little did I know that it would have been in my best interest to be taking it to try and heed any of this that was starting to snowball from this point. The second incident, I was 28 weeks pregnant, and it just shot up to 200 beats per minute without warning. We called an ambulance. I was cardioverted in the back of the ambulance, which is where they shock your heart back into rhythm. I went to the ER. Somebody from labour and delivery did come down and check the baby. I was really worried about it because I'd been to the ER a few times with this now, and people didn't really know what to do. They didn't know why my heart was beating fast. They didn't know what to do about it. At one point, I even said, should I take some more metoprolol? And they were like, if you want. It was just kind of like, I felt like I was in the twilight zone of like, something's really wrong, but everyone's kind of just not seeming that worried, not really doing anything about it. So my intuition and my internal thoughts were like, something's going on. But externally, everyone was so calm and wasn't really saying anything, didn't really seem concerned. I was, didn't want to overreact. And this is kind of where it starts with women and pregnancy, where you kind of made to feel like you're overreacting. Not really listened to. Made to feel a bit silly and like, you're no special. People have, women have children every day. And that kind of started with, having a lot of trouble with that. We'll touch on that again later because that did escalate. But that's kind of when things started kicking off during pregnancy for me. That's where I was at, the things that were going on. Nobody was too concerned, but something was obviously definitely starting to get very wrong.
And that's so true. And I'm pretty sure there are many people that have experienced the same thing with the doctors or physicians looking at you as textbook knowledge, you know what I mean? And looking at you and not looking at you individually as a person and listening to the signs and symptoms that you are making them aware of, as far as what you're going through. And that is one of the biggest things that we are talking to people about with my is being an advocate, advocating fully for yourself and not taking no for an answer, not taking them pushing you to the side for an answer, and really making it known, listen, hey, like you did, something is wrong. I can't pinpoint what it is that's wrong, but there is something going on in my body internally that I know is not correct. So I'm glad to hear that you were on top of, your diagnosis, and you kind of knew, about your SVT already. So you knew that you were at risk already. And you had medications and things in alignment with what you were going through. I did read that you said that it was a big lifestyle change for you, or a sudden change for you, because you had to immediately stop breastfeeding.
Yeah. I feel very, very fortunate, and I even told my personal cardiologist that he saved my life, because I don't think if I already had him in place,
Yeah.
I dread to think when this would have been caught, because I went to 3 separate emergency rooms and I saw many doctors. When I
Wow.
gave birth, I had about 8 or 9 doctors in my room on my, I can tell you about the birth because there's a lot to go over there. So I had a lot of people involved in my care, and a lot of people saw what was going on.
Yeah.
And it's really frightening, because yes, I can advocate for myself to a point, but when you're in the midst of it and you're 28 weeks pregnant and your heart rate's 200 beats a minute and you're in the middle of it alone, because it was COVID, I wasn't allowed to have anyone there for me, which was another thing.
Wow. Yeah.
That was a big hurdle, not having anyone else there. Even under those circumstances, it was still not only missed, it wasn't even on anyone's radar. So I've heard a lot of people say, oh, like people in the emergency room, in the ER, they are kind of on it, and that's where a lot of people got diagnosed, fortunately.
Right.
But for me, there was so many opportunities for it to be caught, and it just wasn't. And that's really affected my trust in like the medical
Yes.
field as a whole, and it's really problematic, because even after they've had me and Lord knows who else, it's still not changed. So what's it going to take? So from that point, I did have my child, and they decided that I would be induced, even though I thought originally I was going to have a planned C-section.
Mm-hmm.
Long story short, unfortunately, things escalated and went very wrong. My induction failed. I got an infection. I was in labor for 17 hours. That didn't help. I was being pumped with fluid, with the IV, which we obviously now know wasn't great for someone like me. They knew I had SVT. I even had a heart monitor on during labor. Until I was discharged, I had a heart monitor on. To this day, I don't know who was looking at that heart monitor, because if they had truly been looking at it, surely they would have seen that something was very wrong.
Right.
I had so many doctors having little conferences in my room, trying to figure out what was going on and what was the best course of care. And I had an emergency C-section. I lost a lot of blood. And then things really went downhill from there. And my symptoms, if we're going to talk about symptoms for people to look out for.
Yes, please.
Obviously, I lost the blood. I was being pumped with fluids, and I had tachycardia. I was being pumped with metoprolol, the beta blocker, while I was in labor before the C-section. I couldn't lay down. It's just all the typical things. I couldn't lay flat.
Yeah.
I couldn't lay on my left side. My heart was racing. I was dizzy. My legs were so swollen. I had those boots on where it's like massaging it. My feet were really swollen. I have to write this down because you forget there's so much that happened.
Yeah.
I had palpitations. I couldn't sleep. I had really low iron. Obviously, I had that infection as well, so I had a fever. But I had the heart monitor on, and I was in hospital, and I trusted them. And I thought, I've got this heart monitor on, so if there's anything, really wrong, they're watching it and they'll do something. I've just got to suck it up. Women go through this every day. I'm not special. I need to stop complaining, because they didn't seem they didn't have any empathy for anything that I was saying. It was just kind of get up, get on with it.
Right.
This is normal. This is normal pregnancy related things. And they discharged me and I went home. So I felt very unwell, but I felt confident that this was the right thing. I was okay to go home.
Yeah. Those were some of the same things that I went through, feeling like something was wrong, letting them know, but feeling like I was being overly sensitive, and that, like you said, that this is what most women go through. It's nothing out of the ordinary. This is normal during pregnancy. Different people have different symptoms, and I was sent home with an elevated blood pressure. And I knew that that wasn't correct because of my lifestyle and the way that I ate, the way that I exercised and walked and did all of those things. And it fell on deaf ears. So I totally understand what you're saying. And I also read in your bio that the way that they actually found out or saw something was wrong was that you collapsed at one of your appointments.
Yeah, so I was sent home. I was in a lot of pain, felt very unwell, couldn't get up the stairs, very short of breath, wasn't sleeping very much. My heart rate was just through the roof, like I was so tachycardic. I think by this point I'd contacted my own cardiologist to say, hey, something's not right, can I see you? And I did have an appointment, but I think it was like 2 weeks out or something like that. So I was just kind of dealing with things and sucking it up. But in the back of my mind, the alarm bells were going off. Like, I literally feel like I'm dying.
Right.
And that wasn't being dramatic or exaggerating. Like, I felt like I was dying. I felt like I wasn't going to wake up. I was like, I'm going to go to sleep now. I'm just not going to wake up. I did go back to the hospital 4 days postpartum.
Okay.
I just had my daughter's first appointment. And I had to go sit out in the corridor and I was just sobbing because, again, this appointment was all about her. Nobody really asked me anything.
Right.
There was no care after I left the hospital the first time. There was nothing. I went back to the OBGYN. Luckily, they fit me in because I said, I'm in so much pain. I ran out of medication. Can I please come in and get something? So they saw me, did the OBS, the vital checks and things, and then they gave me a prescription to go get some more painkillers for the C-section. And I stepped outside. The pharmacy's just right outside the door. And yeah, I collapsed. They called code blue on me in the hospital, and everyone came running out from every door and entrance that you could see. It was really dramatic. And I was like, what is going on? Like, all these people, and this guy just came in and took charge. What's going on? And again, this SVT was in the forefront of my mind. It's got to be SVT. Like, so I told him that straight off the bat. I've just had a baby, had a C-section, I've got SVT. And it was like, that was it. As soon as I said that, it was like everything else was out of the window. And it was just like, oh, they homed in on this SVT and it's got to be this. And, oh, we might have to do an ablation today. And he rushed me down to the ER and it was horrendous down there. That was probably like one of the worst days of my life because they were just so dismissive. I was left alone. I was literally on the phone to my dad saying, I'm going to die in here. And not only does anyone care, I'm just left here. I even unplugged, they hooked me up to the heart monitor machine. I actually unplugged it to try and get them to come in the room. And they didn't.
Wow.
Because I couldn't move by this point. I was just on this trolley and the doctors finally came in and said, we think you've got a pulmonary embolism. We're going to send you for a CT. So I'm freaking out. I've got this blood clot. I've just had a C-section. Like, what is going on?
Right.
I'm thinking I'm going to die. Had the CT scan and they said, oh, no, you don't have a pulmonary embolism. We don't know what's wrong with you. And they didn't really have a very good cardiology emergency room team there. In fact, I think I was told once not to come there if I had an emergency, because they don't have the capability. This is where I birth. It's a military hospital. So they called my cardiologist, and he was like, I've already got her coming in for an echo. I'm going to follow up and do this echo. So they basically said, you're going to have an echo on Friday anyway, so just go to that and let him deal with it, basically. And sent me home. And I was sent home again, and I was just like, maybe it was just a little SVT attack. My body's been through a lot.
So they literally made you wait because you had a pre-planned appointment. At that point, did they do anything, any kind of BNP testing, which we know are markers for these things? Did they do anything like that at all?
I've never had one. No,
Wow.
nothing. And I didn't know as much as I do know now. And looking back now, I'm thinking, if I had a CT, surely they would have seen something. Did they not see anything on that? It just blows my mind. But I think I don't really know. It's kind of a blur after this point. I'm in hell. It's hell. My family can't come and be with me. They're in the UK and they're not allowed. It's COVID. It was just a mess. So it's just me and my husband on my own with this newborn child, and I'm just thinking, I just want to be at home. I don't want to be here. Like, I can't cope with this anymore. It was mentally a lot.
Right. And it is, and for people that are on that have never experienced that emergency room atmosphere, it is crazy. And for a person that is already experiencing something traumatic going on, that just adds on to the stress level. It adds on to the anxiety that you can incur afterwards. And a lot of times people don't address the issues that we as survivors of this peripartum cardiomyopathy go through after. This is a lifestyle and a life change forever for us. And so people don't understand that it affects our activity, our daily activity. It affects our emotional state. It affects, our mentality of the way we look and think about things in the world around us. And so it has a huge impact on our lives, and not only our lives, but on the lives of our family members, on the lives of our friends. We have to change and adjust to a lot of things that come up in our lives that a lot of people can't relate to or don't understand. What changes have you had to make in your life to ensure that you're in a good space mentally, physically, spiritually, going on with this peripartum cardiomyopathy?
It's been a whole journey. And like I said, my family weren't here, so a large part of it was alone. I don't even know where to begin. I mean, I was diagnosed shortly after that. I remember making a little Instagram video to say, I need to get a grip on myself. There's people so much worse off than me. Like, there's people out there who need heart transplants. I literally said those words.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need to, I'm lucky. Like, there's people dying. Like, and then the next day, I got a phone call from my cardiologist, and I didn't even go to the appointment because I thought, it's nothing. I don't want to go. I don't feel well enough. I've got a newborn. Just ring me. And he was ringing me. He's like, this is why I wanted you to come in. He was like, I didn't want to tell you this over the phone. And I just remember him telling me, you've got peripartum cardiomyopathy, you're in heart failure, you need to come in immediately and get this medicine. You have to stop breastfeeding tonight. And I was just I was sat in this room, actually. I was literally sat in this room, and my husband was in the bed with the baby, and I walked out there and I had to tell him. And then, telling your family, and it's horrendous, and nobody understood it. Like, when you say the words, when you say I've got cancer, everyone immediately knows what that means. They know the consequence, they know the time, they've got an idea. But with this, nobody had a clue. Some people didn't believe me. Some people thought I was exaggerating. You've got this physical thing going on in your body that you have to physically deal with medicine and treatment. And there's that side of it, but there's this whole other side of it where you're traumatized. You've been blindsided. You don't know what if you're going to live or not. You don't know if you're going to see your child grow up. You've just had a baby. You know, postpartum depression's getting flung around.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't have postpartum depression. I'm going through this huge, you know, thing. And I wasn't a mega religious or spiritual person before, but I am now, because I've had to face my own mortality. I've had to come to terms with the fact, you know, especially at the beginning, especially when you feel so unwell and it's so unpredictable, and you can be bumbling along great, and then something happens. Because I have unfortunately been to the ER since. The last time was on Mother's Day last year. No, I have.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, Mother's Day last year, 2022. And the further away you get from like a major incident, the better you feel.
Yes.
But it's like always there. And people use this word survived or recovered a lot. But for me, I can't ever look at it that way. It's more like a remission, or you're surviving in the present moment, because survived is a permanent state, in my opinion, and I'm not there, and I don't know if I ever will be. I'm not currently recovered. 2.5 years later, I'm not.
So what was the turning point for you mentally, though, to where you have gotten to where you are like comfortable doing certain things that you weren't comfortable with before? I know being comfortable with even actually talking about it is an accomplishment for most of us, because it can trigger certain things in us. Watching certain things can trigger certain things. Being in certain environments can trigger certain things with different ones of us. So what point are you now? How are you now in maintaining your mental health, your spiritual health? How are you doing with that?
It varies. Like when somebody else have I speak to many women who've got PPCM, and I feel like I'm great at giving them advice and being strong for them and advocating for them. And then when it's me, it's still really difficult, because I've had COVID twice this year. The first time in January 2022 wasn't like, I was really unwell, but like heart wise it was good. And my EF actually went up to 57 after that, and I was recovered, and it was like, wow. I told people I'd recovered and I cried, and then I got COVID again in August 2022, and I'm no longer recovered. It sent me back into heart failure. So I went from exercising daily, running up the stairs, running around with my daughter, feeling really confident and comfortable and at peace with it all. And I was having therapy. And then that happened, and it was like, and it's just such a night and day experience, and it can happen so fast, where you can't breathe when you're talking, and you can't walk up the stairs, and you can't lift your daughter. I couldn't lift my daughter without my heart PVC and palpitating all over the place. And it just puts you right back there to the beginning of, is this it? Is this the downward to the end? Is this going to be it? Is this going to be the time that it's just too much? Am I going to be able to come back from this again? Like, how many chances are you going to get? And it's, you feel so grateful to be here, but at the same time, you're so like angry and upset, and you're still traumatized. Like, I have medical, I don't want to say PTSD as such, but I do have medical trauma. Like, I had a loop recorder fitted, which is a permanent heart monitor, in August, just before I got COVID, actually. So they can monitor it remotely at any point. You can see everything that's going on, because I'm still having issues. Like, I don't know if it's the SVT or if it's just the heart failure. So they're still looking at that and figuring out what to do. Maybe have an ablation or change the medicine. I don't know.
Yeah, because it really affects our heart rhythm a lot. And that's like one of the major things that carries on, because I was diagnosed with syndrome of inappropriate tachycardia, which just means, my heart just races for no reason, whether it's resting or whatever. And one of the things that, it's good to have other people that understand this experience, because even though we know that we are walking miracles, it is our job to still, kind of tell people the reality of what is going on with us, the reality that you can't sugarcoat that reality, because people need to know the signs and the symptoms. People need to know the effects that come along with this. People need to know how to advocate, and in part of this being a miracle series, we know that we're here. We know that, our lives were spared, and that is part of our mission, and our purpose is to spread awareness and to educate people. And that is a huge deal, because there's still so many people that have never heard of PPCM.
When you start looking at the statistics and things, which I guess only if you're going through it you would be inclined to, like 1 in 20 heart transplants, it said, in the US was as a result of peripartum cardiomyopathy, which blew my mind. Like that's wild to me. And you start looking at the numbers and you start applying that to real people, and it's just, how is there not a poster in the OB office so that you can look at it and go, oh, that might be me. When you have that first appointment with your doctor or the nurse when you're pregnant, they have a tick. Mine had a checklist, and it was like preeclampsia. We're going to check you for diabetes. We're going to do this. Why is it not on there?
Right.
It blows my mind. It blows my mind, and it makes me angry. It makes me upset. I think of all the women that this is yet to happen to. All the women that died without even being diagnosed. They didn't even stand a chance to fight this.
Right.
It's a preventable disease, because it doesn't start off as heart disease. It starts off as the issue with the fluid, as we know, and it leads to the heart disease and the heart failure. It doesn't need to get to that point, and it's literally, it's devastating, because you're talking about mothers who've just had children, and there's all these children that are left without mothers, or have mothers who are unwell, and it's just really sad.
And the really sad part is that a lot of times, if they do this testing, the BMP testing, they can figure out that you have these markers for this disorder, and they can start to look into and monitor you. But, with the obstetrician, OBGYNs, and then the heart doctors not working in correlation with each other, unless you already have a cardiac diagnosis, it makes it very difficult. And the mortality rate continues to go up. Like you said, we're continuing to lose people. We are continuing to be misdiagnosed. I feel like preeclampsia kind of overshadows the peripartum cardiomyopathy, because it doesn't matter what you watch, or, when you're speaking with someone, the preeclampsia comes up. And I just wish that we could get as much notoriety for the PPCM as preeclampsia gets. And it's so much in the forefront that even in films where it's clearly something with PPCM, they say it's preeclampsia. Have you had that experience with, interacting with people or physicians, as well as like things that you may have seen or watched concerning these pregnancy concerns?
Yeah, like you say, the obvious diagnoses, like the preeclampsia and the GD diabetes. Can't say that word. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's many women who've had serious issues with those illnesses in pregnancy, but personally now I know so many people who have sadly passed away with PPCM.
Yeah.
And I read something that said it's not rare, it's just rarely diagnosed.
There you go.
I got told, this is so rare, you're so young and you're so healthy. Those words are like really triggering for me now, because you're so young. I'm not even that young. Like, I'm 36 now. Yeah. There's young women who are like 18, however old, when they're having children, and they're having the same issues, because it's not biased. it doesn't matter how old you are.
That's
You can
right.
be as healthy as you can be. And that's what they need to really drum into the narrative, because I'm so tired of people saying, but you're so young and you were so healthy, and this is so rare. And it really, that's not true. And we need to change the narrative, because it's just, at this point, it's a lie.
Yeah, and it has no age. It doesn't care what age you are. You could be a teenager, you could be in your 40s. It does not matter what age you are. And, a lot of people don't understand that it is a silent killer, because people are not diagnosed most of the time until it's too late, until you're in the emergency room fighting for your life, is when you get a diagnosis, or after you have recovered, quote unquote, which they like to use with us when our ejection fraction, or the way that our heart pumps, reaches a certain level. They like to say we've recovered, but they don't address, like I said, the other comorbidities or other health issues that we have acquired due to this. And the other piece of it is, nobody wants to address the psychological piece of it, the anxiety that comes along with it, the not wanting to do certain things because of fear and all of those things. Nobody wants to address the PTSD, and we do suffer from PTSD, many of us, and you don't know it until the trigger comes about, or something happens, or you hear something, see something. Even some people with smelling certain things reminds them of what happened to them. So I think
Yeah.
it's very important that you brought up that PTSD piece of it, because people just affiliate that with the military or other things. But when you have been through a traumatic experience like we have been through, and you continuously are going through these things and facing these triggers from others, telling you you're anxious, telling you what you feel is not what you actually feel, and having to defend yourself or be on the defensive all the time, it does
Yeah.
cause a PTSD to occur in you.
I just realized that I didn't fully answer the question that you asked, so sorry about that. But to answer your question again, what you were saying just there is, we had to put cameras in the house.
Mm-hmm.
My husband is military, so he's at work, and luckily he got held back from a deployment, and they were really great in that, and making sure that he was going to be there, and that there was something in place to make sure he wasn't going to be taken away from the home.
Yeah.
But yeah, we installed cameras because I was terrified of something happening when he wasn't around. And it sounds really silly now, but I just remembered something. Like I remember he was working one night and I didn't feel very well. I had this pre-written out text on my phone that said, "Can someone call an ambulance? This is my address." Like da 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 da, something like that. So I had the ability to just press send quickly if something was going to happen. I've written physically on my arm when I went to the gym, which sounds so stupid. I've had a handwritten note in my purse when I've flown. I'm just so scared of something happening and people not knowing what to do, or knowing what's going on, because or like driving. I didn't drive for a long time because
Yeah.
of symptoms, and I was like really worried like something would happen when driving. Um, a shower with the door open. Like, it's just, there's so many little things that you don't actually start to think about and acknowledge as abnormal until you actually sit down and
Right.
think, okay, I have to shower with the door open because I'm worried if I fall in the shower, would anyone hear? I don't know if that's rational. Maybe it's a little bit irrational. I don't know, because
For
like
us,
you're
it's
not
rap.
really supported in the mental health
Yeah.
aspect of it, because again, you've got another branch of this tree where they're not going to communicate with your cardiologist or your regular doctor. So you just
Yeah.
got all these different people helping you from different angles. No one's corresponding with one another, and you're kind of, you've got a lot of responsibility on your shoulders
Yeah.
to make sure that you're covering all your bases. It's all good and well to be doing exercise and taking medicine, but you're also a new mother, or you've got another child to look after, and you have to look after yourself for your mental health as well. Like, it is a
Right.
lot. I'm not the same. I'm never going to be. Even, you know, I went home recently for a month just with this whole COVID, and I got sick again thing. And the way there, it was me and my daughter, and I took all my stuff with me, and I had a big backpack on and a car seat, and I did it, and I went all the way to England. And then 4 weeks later, I came home. Luckily, my husband was with me, and I'd gone downhill very badly, and I was in a wheelchair. Didn't know if I was going to make it home. I was terrified that I was going to get stuck somewhere. I wasn't going to make it, and I was, you know, you just feel embarrassed, like, I'm young and healthy, and I'm sat in this wheelchair, and people look at me like, why are you in a wheelchair? Why can't you
I
just get up?
remember that feeling. I remember that feeling when I took cardiac rehab, because I was one of the youngest people in there, and you know, there were whispers from the older people, and they were wondering, and you know, why is this young person there? And they would literally walk up to me and ask me, why are you here? What happened to you? You're so young. And a lot of people see our outward appearance, and they just automatically assume that everything is good with us, we're good, everything's okay, and they make these assumptions, and they don't know, you know, what we go through internally, mentally, physically, spiritually. They don't understand that. And so again, it is so important, you know, these interviews, to allow people to see that, you know, there are certain struggles that we go through, and people need to understand that. And mental health, as we see from all of the suicides that have been going on, is so important. It is so important. And I feel like this is a way of suicide prevention as well, because you never know what people go through that takes them over the edge or makes them feel to the point where they want to give in. So to talk about this, to bring it to the light, you know, and to be able to give people ways that they can cope with this is important. So what are some of the ways that you cope with, you know, what you go through? If you're having a bad day, what are some of the things that you may do to bring yourself back around and make yourself feel better, and just, you know, get to the point where you're like, look, this is life, I'm going to live it, I'm going to live it to the fullest, I'm going to do my due diligence to be happy and press forward with what I do?
It's been difficult to find those things with like little support, to be honest, but finding the groups on Facebook and Instagram or wherever of the women that are going through the same has probably been the biggest thing, because until you find those people, you are completely alone. Your family and friends don't really understand. Your doctors don't really understand. I mean, you're lucky if they do even, you know, get it a little bit. But yeah, finding those women is probably the most important thing. And or having those key people like a therapist or a good cardiologist who actually listens and is proactive and is on top of things, so you're not feeling like you're having to constantly fight just to get the basic, you know, care. That obviously helps. But I've had to, you know, I did a lot of reading to figure out, well, what is it I believe in, you know, in terms of life and death. That sounds quite morbid, but true. Like, I watched a lot of documentaries and tried to come to terms with mortality and your death, and just had to come to terms with that. I did receive therapy, and we did some DBT, CBT, and just talked through things. Had to learn different techniques to calm yourself down, just like physically, like meditation, exercise, just getting outside, doing some breathing exercises, or just like anything anxiety or like panic attack related can be helpful, like running cold water on your wrists, or just learning about your body and how it all works, like what is actually physically going on, for me helps to like understand. Because there's lots of things that you can do, like obviously with our tachycardia that you have, you know, that you can, you know, bear down and, you know, do different things. So you have to be proactive. It's not a simple case of going for walks and taking your medicine. It's not. Eating healthy, you've obviously got to do that, and try and identify any triggers. I don't drink caffeine. You know,
Me either.
I don't drink alcohol really. I do sometimes, but not really. And that's only since, I'm 2.5 years down the line. So I've been able to have the odd drink, but I don't really drink anyway. I don't smoke. You just gotta find what works for you, because everyone's so different. Everyone's
Yeah,
lifestyle.
they are. It has affected so many people differently. So that's the other thing. You have the SBT, I have the syndrome of inappropriate tachycardia. So, but we all do know that it does affect our heart rhythms. And so, that's what we work on, getting back into alignment is that heart rate. And, through, like you're saying, lifestyle changes and learning your body and, because a lot of times, a lot of the mental stress that we're under can cause the heart rate issues as well. So, keeping yourself at peace, which can be difficult, but keeping yourself as best you can in a peaceful state and with as little stress as possible. Yeah, that's funny with being moms.
I know. I know, it's like kids, it's like really serious health condition that you need to deal with, but also you've just had a baby and you need to look after them. And it's like,
right.
like you really need to sleep, because sleep's a really big trigger for me. Like if I don't get sleep, it really, really messes me up. But it's like, I've got a newborn baby. She doesn't really like to sleep through the night. So it's really hard. Obviously, you've been through it.
Yeah. And I had the PPCM with my sixth child.
Oh,
So
wow.
never any prior issues during any other pregnancies or anything like that. Just the sixth pregnancy, this came up. I guess my body was tired.
I know
Lots of
that's
stress on your body.
I know that is a lot, yeah. But that's been another thing for me. I have seen quite a lot of people say, "Oh, it's my second child," or they've already had a child. But unfortunately for me, this is my first child, so I had to face that element of things. And I don't think people really talk about that a lot, about not being able to necessarily have another child. That's probably one of the biggest things that I've had to deal with. Like it's really sad and unfortunate, and there's a lot of emotions with that, anger and jealousy, and thinking, well, I'm just going to do it anyway, and then to and froing, am I not, or am I going to? Right now I'm not going to, but it's still hard to concretely say I'm never going to have another child.
Right.
But the longer it goes on, you kind of come to terms with it over time. But I mean, it's really frightening. What if you get pregnant? What do you do? What are your options? And then you see other women going ahead and doing it, and it's just terrifying to sit back and watch and hope that it all works out. And
yeah, and a lot of our groups, there's been many women that have gone on to have, successful second pregnancies. I see that they still have exacerbated heart issues once they do get pregnant again. So, for me, 6 was good. I was at the point where I wasn't going to have anymore, but your heart goes out to people that have one child and want to have more, because, having to face that challenge mentally of what do you do? Do you try it? Do you not? And so facing that challenge is very difficult, especially when you're in a certain age range where you can still have babies. So
yeah, because somebody said once, "Oh, she can't have any more children." I was like, I can. Like, I physically can have children, but whether or not I should is a whole other question that is
right.
I don't know. And it's going to be difficult, like in 10 years' time, if they turn around and go, you know what? It's okay. We figured it out and we're on top of things. And it's like, wow, you kind of missed the boat, because obviously my age, I'm 36. I'm not going to have a child when I'm in my 40s. But yeah, that's just another element of the mental health side of things that isn't addressed. Like when I've been spoken about it with medical people, it's been very abrupt, and quite frankly, I've left many rooms crying because of the way that I've been spoken to. I had one cardiologist, he's not my regular cardiologist, but I saw him for something, and he was like, why haven't you had your tubes tied or whatever? And I was like taken aback, and I was like, well, I'm not ready to do that. And he's like, well, you can't have more children. And he was very abrupt, like, shame on you and how irresponsible of you. And I'm like, well, first of all, I did try and speak to somebody about it, and I'm still waiting for that appointment. I'm going at the end of the month. It took a long time to get the appointment because even though I'm married with one child and I'm 36, you'd think it would be easy to get these things, but it's not. You can't just say, hey, I want to have my tubes tied, or I want a vasectomy, or, you know, your husband might get that. It's not just that easy. You face obstacles even when it's, you know, life or death, maybe, if you have another child. It's not that simple because, again, not everyone's on the same page. They're not all on the same page. And you're kind of, again, fighting for what's best, even though you don't really know yourself. You're just kind of doing what feels right. So I do have an appointment personally to discuss that.
Right.
But up until that point, nobody has ever discussed contraception with me or preventing pregnancy, or it's never been addressed. So I think that's quite scary.
Yeah.
Especially for younger people who might be in a different place in life and think, no, I want to have another child. And they're just not really getting that support, really. You know, accidents happen. If someone was to get pregnant, you know, accidentally, it's quite scary.
Yeah.
Especially, you know, the world today, with everything that's going on, what would happen in that case? That, you know, when those things started happening in the media, that was a big thing on my mind. Like, hey, maybe we need to start taking action because it might not just be as simple.
Right.
As you think.
That's true. That is very true.
There's just so many different elements to this. Having PPCM that people might not have thought of if they've just been diagnosed, or, you know, if they're just watching this and thinking about getting pregnant. There's a lot to consider.
Yeah. What would you say to someone that is newly diagnosed as to how they could better advocate for themselves, or some things that they could do to kind of keep themselves from being so anxious? Because I know, like, if I had someone that could share with me, you know, some of the things that they went through, I could have maybe lessened some of my anxiety. A part of it was that I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what I was facing. I didn't know what was going to be up against me. And so that not knowing caused me to be very anxious when it came to experiencing certain things in my body.
Yeah, I really do feel for those women who don't have access to the internet or Facebook, or don't even think to look for those groups, because that's one of the biggest things. I mean, that's how I met you and how I'm having this conversation today. You know, you've got to remember, not everybody has internet, not everybody has a phone, not everybody, you know, has access to these groups, because I'm in some American groups, I'm in some UK groups, I'm sure there's plenty of others. But there's a nurse, she is like a case manager, like a chronic disease type nurse. So she contacted me and said I'd been put on a register when I was diagnosed with heart failure. I didn't know that existed. And she called me in, and we had a conversation, and she gave me loads of research and made sure that my cardiologist was doing all the things that he's supposed to be doing. Like, with the up-to-date information, and he was. And it turns out that she had 7 other patients who have this PPCM, and I was like, wow, because I was told this is rare and I'm all alone here, and there's no one that I can physically go and meet up with and say, hey, I understand, we're in this together, I'm there any day, you know, call me anytime that you want. But luckily I went on Facebook and typed in PPCM, and I found these groups. I don't know what I would have done without that. So, oh God, it's so hard to say. What would you say to someone who's newly diagnosed? Because it just feels so fresh. Like, even though it's 2.5 years down the line, I still feel like so new to this, because I was that person, and now I'm slowly, hopefully, becoming someone who someone else might turn to. I do have friends, and I've spoke and advocated strongly for people who have been newly diagnosed and are not getting the, you know, best treatment and are being dismissed even still.
Yeah.
God, I guess I tell them not to Google like I did and see the 5-year life expectancy that I saw on Google. Don't do that.
Right. Please don't. That is so
it's
true.
hard. It's hard
Not
to
go
say
on
what to.
Google.
I would say, hopefully, you can find a group of people in your family and friends that are going to listen and be there for you. It is hard to rely on friends and family all the time, because obviously initially they might be there, but everyone's got their own lives to lead, and it is a lot. It's a lot to deal with. I'm not gonna name names, but like people, there was someone in my family that I cried to, and there was a miscommunication. I couldn't understand why they were reacting the way they were reacting, and I just broke down and said, the way that you're reacting and the things that you say make me feel like you don't take this seriously, you're being dismissive, and it really hurts. And they said, I'm so sorry. It's just because that I can't bear the thought of, you know, being here. Like, this is just so much for me. Like, I have to pretend that it's all going to be okay. So that's why I tell you it's all going to be okay. And I stay really positive. And they didn't realize that it was coming across as dismissive.
Right.
They thought they were being supportive. So I think it's important to just be really honest with yourself and with your friends and family, if that's the person that you're going to go to for support. But ultimately, I think finding people who are going through this is in my opinion going to be the best source of support, because, you know, I don't want to be a burden to everyone. I don't want to tell them every single incident. I don't want to always be a Debbie Downer of, oh, something's going on again. It's hard for your family and friends. You have to let them in and let them support you, but, you know, if it's 3 a.m. and I'm having palpitations and I'm freaking out, you know, I don't want to be waking people up. So, you know, rely on them if you can. If you can create a little support network with people who understand what you're going through, or they've got something similar, like in the cardiac rehab, there's lots of different people in there for different reasons. They can be a great source of support they might not know necessarily. I really loved cardiac rehab. I was very fortunate to go, and the nurses and doctors and the nutritionists there were amazing. You still there?
Someone keeps calling me.
Okay. Yeah, cardiac rehab. You back?
Yes, I'm back. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry. Someone was calling me, so it knocked me out of the broadcast. But I am so happy that you did decide to come on and interview with me. It has been a blessing because, you know, I think that people have gained so much knowledge from this interview and from you being willing to share your experience that you went through and how you continue to overcome, and how you've shared the fact that this is a process. This is not something that we wake up from and it's gone away and you can put a Band-Aid on it. This is something that we continuously experience in our lives, and through faith, through our belief systems, through different practices, we have been able to overcome and get to the point where we are today, you know, with our sanity, with our emotions, you know, physically, and we are able to advocate for other people. We're able to speak up. So this is a huge accomplishment, and I, you know, I give you honor for coming on and doing this, because many people are not to the point where they can even share or speak about what happened to them. So I extend high honor to you, and I'm very grateful that you decided to do this interview with me, and hopefully we can do more things together to bring awareness. You're not that far from me, so
I know. Thanks for having me and just allowing people to have a platform and a voice. Like I said earlier, like not everyone has a voice. It got taken away. They're not here anymore, or they just don't have the platform or the connection or the ability to reach out and speak about these things. That's a gift in itself to me, to be able to speak and be listened to, and know that I'm not alone, and to know you, someone like you who's been going through this for so long. You said 12 years.
Yes.
That's the only thing that gives me hope. Like, there's women out there who've been doing this longer than me. I can do this. I've got to keep fighting on.
Yes.
And, you know, give up. And I wouldn't say light at the end of the tunnel, because like you said, it's not linear, it's up and down, it's all around, but it's not, you know, necessarily a death sentence. It is for many. I understand that, but it doesn't have to be.
Right. We're still here.
We're still
here to tell our stories and to share. We are walking miracles. We are living testaments, even though some days it feels like, what? But we are here. We are alive and kicking, and, you know, and it is possible. Doing this 10 years, it is possible. It's possible to feel good and to be positive and to do those things. You know, it's a long journey. It's not easy, but it's possible. And so, you know, as long as we have each other and we have people that understand what we're going through, and, you know, we don't ignore each other, but we validate, you know, those things that we actually feel, that we know that we're going through. We validate each other, and that in itself is so important. It's so important. I wish I had that in 2012, where I had these groups or knew about these groups, because I think I would have been a lot better off at that time. And so I'm so grateful for the groups that we have. I'm so grateful for connections with other women like yourself. And if you are out there and you need people to talk to, or you can always inbox myself. There are other organizations. My organization is PPCM Healthy Hearts. I am based in Virginia. You have Let's Talk PPCM with Miss Brianna Henderson, that is based in Texas. And then you have Miss Lindsay Stoloff Peterson, who is in California, and she has the PPCM Fund. They are great resources full of knowledge concerning this peripartum cardiomyopathy. So we like to take this time to thank you all for joining us for this broadcast. Thank you so much. There are more broadcasts to come concerning PPCM, as well as people who have survived different things and are walking miracles. It's all about highlighting the things that we have overcome and continue to overcome in our lives. Until next time, this is Miracles of Life with Dr. Mimi, Walking Miracles. Be blessed.
Thank you. Bye.